Basically, we use a lot of treats in the initial stages because we're trying to build motivation. We're trying to get a very typically distracted puppy or dog and use something that they want in order to get them to choose us over distractions. Hey, I'm Kale McCann. I have been a professional dog trainer for 23 years with McCann Dogs, and McCann Dogs helps nearly 1,500 dogs a week through our in-person and online classes. Today, we're going to be taking your top questions from our leash walking videos, and we're going to answer them. Leon Bossett. Why the left side? Most walking training videos recommend the same. It actually stems like way back when from like traditional dog training when soldiers would have dogs, they would have their gun on their right and their dog on the left. Also in obedience training, the dogs are on the left. It really doesn't matter, but if you're gonna be following any programs or if you're gonna be walking your dog on the street on a regular basis, I've personally trained my dogs to walk on both sides because I walk so many dogs at the same time, but I do really like the left because then I can keep them on the outside of the road and I'm on the inside. I feel like it keeps them a little safer. Short answer, it's tradition. It's just the way it's been. So you can do whatever you want as long as you're consistent. From Sandy Priester. I actually prefer walking at a slow pace with my dog and let her sniff everything. There are certain times where you totally can go for a walk where the dog's just chilling out and doing their own thing. If you're having trouble with dogs that are pulling or distracted, walking slow is actually your worst enemy because there's just so much opportunity for them to look around and get distracted. Walking slower is actually way more challenging for your dog than it is walking at a faster pace. If you're looking to improve your leash walking, if you're looking to improve your dog's attention on you, it's actually best to walk not even a normal pace, but a brisk pace to keep your dog engaged with you. And then once your dog's fully trained on the leash, you could actually put the sniffing on a command so that the dog isn't just learning when the leash is hooked on, they can just disconnect and do their own thing. There's gonna be a time to do that. And then of course, the default should be that they should be hanging out with you. Hans Kosenli, absolutely butchered that and I am so sorry. What do you use for treats that make them pay so much attention to you? It really just depends on the dog, to be honest. We try to use something that's a little higher value, or if we have a dog that's really food motivated, sometimes when we're working, we will just use their kibble. Some of our favorite go-tos would be chicken hot dogs, cheese, tuna treats, things that are really smelly and delicious and easy for us to use, something that's like semi-moist that the dog can eat and like keep working at the same time. Most of the time when they're paying a lot of attention to us, it is not entirely up to the food. It's also our engagement and how we're interacting with the puppy. This is especially important if we're working with a puppy that's not super food motivated. Sometimes you can build the attention and the drive just by how you're interacting with them. Guillermo Gonzalez. I have been having trouble with this. I have 2 dogs and the younger one still pulls relentlessly. Is it better to train him individually? The thing that sort of sucks about walking 2 dogs that don't walk well is they just feed off of each other and it basically just feels like you're like water skiing behind them. If you have 1 or 2 dogs that don't really know how to walk well together yet, absolutely it's best to train them individually. Make sure that they understand their job separately, and then from there you can bring them together. And it might happen that one dog takes a little longer than the other dog, but definitely if you're walking with multiple dogs, you don't want to be walking 2 dogs at the same time that don't really know their job. Once they know their job, I walk 4 dogs and it goes well, but typically if I have a new dog, I will walk them separately until their training is complete. From Life is Good. Too many treats. I want to see someone that is training them without those treats. Would you work for things that you don't care about? Basically, we use a lot of treats in the initial stages because we're trying to build motivation. We're trying to get a very typically distracted puppy or dog and use something that they want in order to get them to choose us over distractions. The thing that you need to remember about using treats in your training is that it's not a forever thing. There's a huge myth out there that says when you use treats to train your dog to listen, you have to use treats forever, and that could not be further from the truth. Treats are a stepping stone to build motivation, to get your dog doing it right. The McCann method is all about setting the dog up to learn what to do first correctly, and then from there we proof, and part of the proofing phase is, can you now do this behavior without me holding a piece of food on your nose? So the food becomes a reward, which becomes more random as time goes on. You definitely can train your dog to do a lot of these things without food. You could use toys or you could use praise. For walking specifically, that can be really challenging. Also, our choice with our methods of dog training is to do it in a more positive manner. If you're working with a really distractible dog and no food, the only other option that you have to get them to listen to you is by using the leash or changing direction. For some dogs, that's sort of starting off with a little bit more of a negative undertone, and that's just not how we prefer to do things. So that's the reasoning why we use so many treats in the beginning stages. D. Horvat 72. How many treats are you feeding these dogs? Watching multiple videos, I see it's constant food. What happens when the dog stops responding to all the different treats you have? Also, wouldn't constant feeding cause the dog's stool to be rotten? Oh, that is a very specific concern. The amount of treats that you use with the dog is honestly just dog dependent. If you have a dog that is really distractible and the food isn't working as well, you might want to switch out to something a little higher value, or a really great trick to do is just to change your environment. Maybe walking out on the street around all the distractions of other people and dogs and cars and stuff, that's just too challenging for your dog to actually stay focused. Food is initially there to build the exercise, and then you can wean off of it from there. What happens when the dog stops responding to the different treats that you have? You have to kind of determine why that's happening. Is it that you are using something that they don't find is very exciting? Is it that you've trained that exercise too long? There is such thing as practicing too long or too much, especially with a young dog. So maybe you push things past the limit. Could be that the environment that you're working in is just way too much for whatever reward or value you're bringing to the table in that moment. Wouldn't constant feeding cause the dog's stools to be rotten? I mean, it depends what you're feeding the dog, I suppose. There's some dogs that have sensitive bellies, and if that's the case, then you might want to be a little bit more specific about what food you give them. I know for us, if we're going to be using a lot of treats in our training, we will definitely reduce the amount of food or kibble that we're giving them so that they don't turn into these giant blimps. And if you are having a dog that has an upset stomach by the food that you're giving, I would definitely think about giving them a different item of food. Maybe they have an allergy, maybe it's just not high quality enough. But if that is happening, you need to switch things up because that's not the norm. That's not the normal case. The next one is from Misha V. I must say, I love these videos. I don't have a dog yet, but I plan on getting a puppy in another year. These videos are helping me get ready. I love that you're looking at these videos before even having a dog. I think a lot of people underestimate the education and the knowledge you can actually have before even bringing a puppy home, which means that when you start out, you are gonna start out on the right foot. And I hope that when you get your puppy, you come back and see us and have a lot of fun with your training. Next question is from Lyric Etc. Completely untrained bolting dog to perfect walker in 3 treats. I think not. I'm not really sure what section of the video you were watching, because that is definitely not the case. Dogs don't go from bolting to perfect walking in 3 treats. This is actually a really common criticism that we get on our channel about dogs looking way too trained. And I think what people get hung up on a little bit too much is that it's all about the food. It is absolutely not about the food. Food is great, but so much of this is how we set the dog up to be successful. It's how we use the leash. It's how we hold our body. It's how we talk to the dog. It's when we give them information that they're right, when we give them information that it's wrong. You know, teaching your dog to walk on leash, the treats and the food is like such a small component of what gives you success. We bring in dogs that are not trained, and because the methods are so easy for the dogs to understand and we're setting the dog up to be successful, it doesn't take very long to get great success. What you need to remember though is that just because you get success in that one moment doesn't mean like your training's done and you know, you don't have to do it anymore. Walking training has to do with consistency. It has to do with situations. You know, just because the dog can learn to walk perfectly in the studio doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna walk perfectly, you know, in every situation for the rest of its life. We just wanna take the tools that we learned in this scenario and practice it on our walks, in our backyard, going for a hike, whatever it might be. I know it might appear to look this way to some people that maybe are so focused on the food, but try and look at the big picture. It's really about all of those elements that make the results happen so quickly. Sandra Mariano. I must admit that I am dreading walk time. Max is a 58-pound lab mix and pulls me so hard. You are definitely not alone. I think if walking is not going well, it's sort of a vicious circle because it's not enjoyable to take dogs for a walk, so then they don't end up getting walked, which means they're not really learning to walk, which means they're never getting better. What you really need to think about when you have a dog that is not walking well is it's okay to stop walking them, but what are you doing in the meantime to make sure that you can get back out onto your regular walks, whether it's training them to do some walking skills in the house, maybe in the driveway. Isolate the situation a little bit easier, more to make things a little bit more easy, and set your dog up to be successful by maybe going back to some of the foundational steps to teach your dog that there's a lot of value for walking at your side. Another thing that could be helpful for a dog that, is big and strong like this is, what equipment are you using? Do you have, a well-fit collar? Do you have, a good leash? Maybe the dog needs to be wearing something like a gentle leader. There's so many things that could go into making this experience a little bit more of a positive one. I definitely can sympathize with you. Or empathize with you. It is not fun to be dragged down the street with a dog. Walking is supposed to be an enjoyable thing that you can go out and experience with your dog. So if it's not happening, stop the rehearsal of the bad stuff, and you need to go in and you need to go back to do some training to make it a more valuable thing for your dog to actually walk with you. And that unfortunately takes a bit of work. Cole Abo. I have a pretty high energy dog, and even though we've been training him from the beginning, he can still be a little difficult on his morning walk. I've started playing fetch for 10 to 15 minutes before to drain some of his energy. When he starts to slow down, then we walk. Helps a lot. That can be a good and a bad thing. Let's talk about the good first. If you have a dog that's really high energy and you're looking to improve your walking, it actually can be a really tactful thing to exercise your dog first, get some of that crazy out, whether you play fetch or whatever you might do. What you're playing fetch, that's awesome. And then walk, you'll get a lot more success. You also want to make sure that your dog is able to walk even at times when they're energetic, because we won't always have an opportunity to tire our dogs out in order to make them listen. Dogs need to be trained to the point where even when they're feeling really excited and pumped, that because they know what their job is, they can walk really well. We see this happen with our classes sometimes, where people will run their dogs a ton and then come to class, and then the dogs do relatively well, and then later in the week they're like, my dog's horrible, my dog's doing this. And really what we want them to do is bring the crazy dog to class so that we can show you what to do in those scenarios when the dog is making poor choices. I think it's a good idea to do that, but I wouldn't do that exclusively. Make sure that you're also working on training your dog to learn to listen when you do that, have that high energy. And maybe a great suggestion would be, don't necessarily go for walking. Try something else. When your dog's energetic, can they do sit stay? Can they do down stay? Can they sit and look at you? Can they hold, a loose leash while you're just moving around? Walking's a really hard one, so work your way up so that you can have the best of both worlds. I want to know one thing: how long does it take for her to really get the dog to get to this point? Were there extra takes before we got here? I just want to make sure I don't get discouraged if after 15 minutes my puppy isn't this well behaved. I just want to know the truth. I won't think I am misled. I just want to be realistic. Super fair question. We are absolutely not trying to mislead anybody. As a professional dog trainers, we know exactly what to say, how to move, how to motivate the dog. So you do get results really quickly. Will you have a dog that walks perfectly in a matter of 15 minutes, till the end of the time? Absolutely not. We don't either. We were just able to get success in that moment, in that scenario. What you need to remember is that dog training is fluid. You're going to have some days that are great, some days that are not so great. It also depends on what's happened with you and the dog up until the point of your training. So if your dog's gone months with, rehearsing poor behavior, you can't really expect to fix it in 15 minutes versus somebody who's starting with a dog that's really young, that hasn't had a lot of rehearsal of bad behavior. That goes really quickly. So if after 15 minutes your puppy, isn't as well behaved as the puppy that you see in the video, don't worry about it. You're going to be on a bit of a different journey. It might mean that it takes a little bit longer if you're a less experienced person. The most important thing is to figure out how to get the success and then to take the show on the road and practice it in different places. When we post YouTube videos, we're showing you a glimpse of what we do with the dogs, and often we're training dogs that don't even belong to us. So we get success in that moment, but it doesn't necessarily mean when we hand the leash back over to their owner that they're good to go. They now have to do the homework. Dogs unfortunately are not robots. They need a lot of repetition and training and practice. Don't worry, you'll get there. There's very few things that you can train to perfection in 15 minutes in dog training. This question is from Skoog. It's a great name. My dog does this exercise perfectly, but as soon as we do it live, everything is forgotten. I'm assuming that doing it live means that you're training it and then you're going out and trying to apply it to real life. This is actually really not uncommon. There's lots of dogs that will do it really, really well when there's not a lot of distractions or there's not a lot of things that are pulling their attention away from you. And then when you go for a walk on the street or you go for a hike in the woods or whatever it might be, it's such a drastic change. So a dog like this might benefit from taking distractions and bringing them to the environment that the dog is successful. So a really good example of this would be if you practice in your driveway or in your house, for example, start adding distractions. You know, put some of their favorite toys on the ground in a few different places. Bring some food in, have your kids bounce a tennis ball, make sure the cat's running around, whatever it might be, and work through teaching your puppy to be more responsive to you or your dog more responsive to you while there's distractions there. It can be really hard for dogs to go from one setting where all the, things in the environment is perfect to out in the real world where we can't really control what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to come up, what noises are going to be made or whatnot, and that can be a challenge. So one of the easiest things to do for dogs like this, like I said, is to take those distractions and control them, but in the environment that your dog's already doing a great job in. From MDL, I enjoy Steve's approach. My question is, what do I do about walking my puppy while he's still learning to walk on a loose leash? Our 30-minute morning walk could take a while if I address all of the instances of pulling. I can't avoid exercising my dog until she's learned not to pull. So true. You absolutely can't avoid exercising your dog until they learn not to pull. So I want you to think about this as two totally separate exercises. You can take your 30 minutes and you can do a variety of training things to both physically and mentally exercise your dog. And part of that could be doing some walking on leash training. You definitely don't want to put yourself in a scenario where you're going to get frustrated that every single time they pull, you have to address it. On the other hand, you don't just want to be like, well, I don't really feel like it today, so I'm gonna let my dog pull for a little while and then I'll address it. It's hard for your dog to understand the rules if it's like a sometimes rule. If your dog is not consistently walking on a loose leash, you need to make sure that you're training your dog to walk on a leash and then you're exercising your dog. And that's two totally different things. To be perfectly honest, taking your dog for a walk isn't really that good of exercise. It's just sort of like a way to get your dog out and about. It doesn't really tire them out and give them really good exercise. Playing fetch, doing some higher energy training sessions or work them mentally like trick training, problem solving, that's actually more effective to tire your dog out where they'll come home and sleep on the couch for a while than it is to take the dog for a leisurely stroll. You're on the right track. Don't worry about that. Just really think about them as two separate things until the walking becomes a little bit more reliable. And then you do want to get to the point where you're out for a walk. You do need to address the pulling each and every time in order to actually affect change. Mary Gillespie, maybe Gillespie, I'm not really sure. Start with a loose leash. Ha! The leash has never been loose, in capital letters. He has pulled every instant. If you follow our channel, you probably have heard us say this many times, and if you haven't, I shall say it again. You do not want to be putting your dog in a situation where they can pull constantly. If that is the type of rehearsal that's happening on your walking, you're never going to get success. That's why your dog is pulling every instant. It's so hard for the dogs to know what to do if they're not really trained to know what to do. Teaching your dog to walk on a leash, it's all about teaching the dog where the value is. If a dog's pulling, the value that the dog sees is everything that's going on around them in life except for you. They don't actually give two hoots about who's on the end of the leash. All they care about is what they see in front. When you teach your dog to walk on a leash, it teaches your dog to be able to focus and connect with you while being able to check in what's around them by holding a loose leash. And we train the dogs in a way that they actually want to keep the leash loose because they've been reinforced so much for that. If you're looking for more help to teach your dog to walk on a loose leash, click that card right there. And if you want some daily support from one of our McCann Dogs instructors, check out our Life Skills online program. The link for that is in the description below. On that note, I'm Kale McCann. Happy training.